It is the end of the road. Tesla is doomed. We've seen production in Q1 look so terrible. No one can make heads or tails of it unless they, look at it for 2 seconds and actually listen to people who've actually looked at these things, which is what I've done. I went ahead and brought on Cern Basher. You may know him from X. You may know him from other channels like Herbert and probably Randy Kirk, maybe. I don't know. All kinds of other channels I see you around. He's done some fine work. He knows what a spreadsheet is. He knows how to make a chart, and he knows how to look at the actual numbers that actually matter. We're going to get into that. We're going to discuss some recent posts he's done and explain why the numbers are not all doom and gloom. They just make sense. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So, Cern, I saw that post of yours and I had to bring you on because some craziness. Give us the context first, and then we'll jump into the actual graphs you made.
Oh, it had just been a couple of days since I made a pretty chart, so I assumed, I needed to make another pretty chart. So I went looking for some data, and it was not hard to come by because Tesla had just reported their production and delivery numbers for Q1, and there seemed to be a little bit of misunderstanding around that.
There was. The headlines were so bad that day that for the show that I did with Herbert, we only looked at Google News headlines and just didn't even click on them. We're just going to add the context here because this is bonkers. The story is over. Look at how much sales are down in one particular market. No, it's all these markets that are fed by the same factory that was offline. Giga Berlin only makes one car. So why don't we jump into it here? This is one of the things you shared. What's this? Even production.
Yeah, so if we take a look at the number of vehicles that Tesla produced in Q4 before the shutdown, that was about 460,000 vehicles in Q4 of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And if you assume that on average is 90 days in a quarter, right? Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on what time of year it is. Then you would get to 5,111 vehicles produced per day if we're talking about 7 days a week production, right? So just what does the even production look like on a daily basis throughout the quarter? So this is our baseline. If they had continued this production in Q1, we could have expected about 480,000 vehicles, 460,000 vehicles in the quarter produced, or 5,111 per day.
Mm-hmm. So this is what it would look like if we were just talking like robotic terms.
That's right. Yeah, the
So that
production schedule, I'm sure the actual production looks nothing like this, but since we
right.
don't get to see that on a daily basis,
But on a daily basis, if all models are fully ramped, if all lines are running as expected, it would just kind of waver right there.
I think so for the most
Yeah,
part.
more or less.
Yep.
Now,
Now this is
Q1,
if you add each day to each other, so then you as you progress throughout the quarter, you get this cumulative production. And again, it would be 460,000 vehicles by the end of the quarter.
very linear, very easy to understand. And
Yeah.
this is, of course, what Tesla does, what all manufacturers do when they're rolling out a new product, I'm sure. Then we've got this
Yeah. So
shut down with an instant ramp.
there we go. So here's an example of you shut down production for a while, you retool the factory, you bring the lines back up, you flip a switch, and all of a sudden you've got 5,111 vehicles being produced every day.
It's a magic switch. They're
Magic switch.
expensive, but they apparently exist.
That's right. The golden, that's why it's colors, kind of golden color. It's kind of the golden switch.
Mm-hmm.
And if we overlay this set of numbers with the previous one on the next page, you can see what it would be. It would result in about 385,000 vehicles produced during the quarter, just from being down 3 weeks and having an instant switch.
Okay. And yes, but deliveries were only 360, right? Production. We're talking production.
Talking production. Yeah.
We're talking production. So then
So
we look at this.
we also know that it's impossible really for you to have that magic switch as much as any company would love to have that. That doesn't exist. More likely, there's a production ramp after a shutdown. And again, this is a linear production ramp. I'm sure it's probably more stair-step than this.
Yes, there's bottlenecks to overcome. And as you overcome, you'll get a little jump and then a little pause. And yes.
Yeah. And it might even be longer than a 2-week ramp. I'm just showing a two-week ramp
Sure.
here. Right. So if you add all those numbers up, the red line, you get to 362,000 production in the quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, and I show that here in the table in the white section there, the production for Q1 of 2025 was 362,000 vehicles.
So it looks almost exactly like this scenario. Now, this split the difference here. This is, I'm assuming, Model 3, S, X, and Cybertruck.
That's correct. And again, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are
Oh,
certainly many of those vehicles produced during that shutdown period for the Model Y.
we are trying to simplify. Of course, this number is going to look weird. If it was stacking all of them, you'd see variations in all of them at different times. Oversimplification. Now, Cern, you got to help me out here. Maybe I'm crazy, but when Chevy makes their new Malibu, okay, they don't make those anymore. When they make their new vehicle, we don't see a lag in sales. Why is that?
Well, when it's a new vehicle, you don't know what the previous number was, right?
Right. And also, we don't, and also they stuff the channels.
Sure. Well, actually, that's right. A very different model, isn't it? When you sell to dealerships, that's right.
Yeah, you've got 6 months of inventory sometimes.
Yeah.
Certainly, very few manufacturers get under 30 days. Most stay in the 60 to 120 day range. You could shut down. Well, we've seen it. We've seen where Ford will say this whole factory is going offline for 2 months, 3 months. And yet you can just still go down and get one because that's how many they have just sitting around hoping somebody gets a hankering for a new F-150.
Yeah.
And also that F-150 has multiple factories, but yeah, all of that is fine.
Now, in Tesla's case here, we did have a discrepancy between the production numbers of 362,000 and deliveries of about 336,000.
Right.
Right. And so a lot of people point to that and say, oh my gosh, there's evidence of brand damage. There's a whole bunch of vehicles, there's 26,000 vehicles that they didn't sell.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Right. And so there's a couple things there. Now, we can't completely disprove that there wasn't any brand damage, but based on the previous numbers we just shared, it's highly unlikely that that was a major issue in Q1, although certainly it could be a factor, particularly if the new production capacity is a lot more than that magical 5,111 I based the numbers on. Right? Let's say they could have ramped up to 6,000 vehicles or 7,000 vehicles per day, then yes, maybe they weren't able to, produce enough, or they didn't need to produce that many in order to meet the demand. That's possible. And since no one knows what Tesla's order rates and order book looks like, we can't definitively make that statement.
So that's one thing to notice. Brand damage, it is real. How big is the impact? And is the impact only one-sided? There are people who very strongly disagree with his politics, his political machinations, but there are also people who are in favor of it. I have met a number of them who said, I bought my first Tesla because of Elon's positions. I have yet to see data that evaluates with any accuracy the impact either way. So I don't know what that number is. There is some brand damage. There is some brand benefit, I suppose. But what if there was no brand damage? What if everyone in December on Christmas Day, the Christmas miracle was that everyone fell in love with Tesla and Elon and the product and everybody wanted one? You can't sell cars you're not building, can you?
It's pretty difficult. The other thing too is when a vehicle rolls off the production line, we do have a little bit of an issue with physics at that point. It's hard to instantly get a vehicle that you just produced from a factory that is thousands of miles away from your customer to get it in their hands instantly. It takes a few days, maybe even a few weeks to get that vehicle in the customer's hands. So the fact that Tesla had about 5 days of production difference between production and delivery in the Q1 is some evidence of that. It just takes a while to move that vehicle somewhere.
Also worth noting, in anticipation of the retooling, Tesla drew down inventory in Q4. Q4 had the lowest days of inventory we've seen probably since the pandemic. You got to restock that. There's a number at one point, I think at one point Tesla had gotten down to like 11 days of inventory during their absolute biggest crunch on supply. That's not a healthy level to be at. You don't want to be at 11 days of inventory because that means you're missing out on sales. That means you must order a vehicle well in advance if you wish to get it. That means that if someone totals your Camry today, you can't just go in and get a Tesla tomorrow. Having some inventory on hand solves that problem to an extent. How much do you think intentional restocking accounts for this?
That's a good question. And I don't know that we know those numbers. Um, in my opinion, the biggest explanation here is the shutdown production, and then of course just the time it takes to deliver produced vehicles somewhere. By my estimates, in a normal quarter, it's an average of about 18 days per vehicle. Now, vehicles coming from Shanghai going over to Europe or Australia or Chile or places like that, it could be more like, 30,
3 to
45
4
days,
weeks, yeah.
right? And certainly vehicles that are made in Shanghai and delivered in China, the average time is a lot less. Um, so, and same thing in the United States. Vehicles that are made in Texas and sold in that area probably delivered within a few days, but elsewhere in the country, it takes a while longer. So, on average, my estimate is it takes about 3 weeks.
And that seems reasonable. We know that when supplies were limited, when they were struggling to get vehicles out at the end of the quarter, when every quarter felt like an existential crisis, because the stock price was so low that if it falls much more, we could be in buyout danger, or the debts we have that are convertible will not convert. They will ask for their money back instead.
Yeah,
They were paying expedite fees. They were incurring tremendous additional costs to get units out as quickly as possible. That's not critical anymore. Elon had said maybe 2, 3 years ago, he was going to start unwinding the delivery wave. That doesn't mean there aren't delivery waves in a particular market, but it means that in Korea, the first month of every quarter only sells like 1 or 2 units. Right. Those are the leftovers from last month that didn't close on time.
right.
There will otherwise be no sales. There's no ship that arrives in the final month of the quarter. It arrives right around the middle. They ship it out the beginning to capture it that way. So you remember, I'm sure, all the headlines we saw from 2019 onward. Sales collapsed this month in Latvia, or some small market that only gets that will get one boat a quarter, maybe 2 boats a quarter. They would show up at the same time. But this month, it's over. It's done. It's nice to see less of that, but it's still around.
Still around. Let me ask you these two questions, Brian. Putting on your Tesla strategy hat, let's say you've been hired by Tesla to be their chief, product strategist. Okay, if that such a role exists. Okay, maybe that's Elon's role. All right, I'm the designer of the car, and I say I've designed a new vehicle. We're going to replace the old Model Y with the new Model Y. Brian, tell me the time of year when it would be best to make this transition. When would you pick?
Without hesitation. Well, first I would say, I do not know the automotive industry. I would say pick whichever quarter historically has the lowest sales in the entire industry. Which quarter is that?
Could that be the middle of winter?
It's Q1 is always the lowest quarter. So that would be the correct. That's why we saw the Model 3 changeover in that time frame as well.
Yeah. And also, you know what? We have a production facility in Shanghai where there's a New Year's celebration that shuts down the entire country for a couple of weeks. Might that be a good time to consider doing the retooling?
Absolutely. And you can keep the workers on to do the retooling. You just have to pay them something like time and a half or double, and it's optional. And
Yeah,
people opt for it because it's tremendously good money. Skip one vacation, make a ton of money, and get the retooling done. And you saw in Shanghai, the numbers sprung back very quickly. Oh, but March was devastating. The competition has arrived. Tesla's done. Wasn't March their like third best month ever? It was a very strong production month for
mhm,
Shanghai.
yeah,
And what we will see is, if we go back to your charts here, this flat line that we see at the top would now be inching up a little because the Model Y is now easier to make. It is more efficient. They have ironed out some manufacturing inefficiencies. Would you agree?
I agree. Here's my second question for you. I am now in Tesla's finance department, and I'm coming to you as the chief product strategist. And I say, okay, Brian, amazing thing has happened. We no longer have to report quarterly results.
Hmm.
When would you like to do this model changeover?
Still in Q1,
Yeah.
wouldn't I? Yeah, still in Q1, still the time when the least people are desperate to get a car, when the most people are on vacation, or in the US at least recovering from a season of vacations. I would still want to do it in Q1, wouldn't I?
And I would say, You know what? I think you're right because Wall Street analysts are smart enough to understand the reasons for this. And they're smart enough to understand that one quarter does not make a company. Am I making a mistake in that statement, Brian, as the chief strategist?
I do
Yeah.
not believe you are. Well, here's my question. Now you're the chief strategist. Uh, Other companies will make sufficient quantity of the old unit to maintain sales at the current level until the new one is available. This product is quite a bit different than the old one. Should we do that, or should we just try and clear those out
Based on our
entirely?
research, Brian, everybody wants the new one. It is materially better than the old one. And the sooner we, rip off the Band-Aid, the better. Yeah.
We would have to cut the price substantially to
Yeah.
move out those old units. And they did. At the end, they were offering an additional, I think, $1,000 discount on them. And they cleared them out. Even with just $1,000 off, they cleared them out in like 2 days, 3 days, to the point where there was no inventory left in the US. And it's not like the difference between a 24 and a 25 Camry. That's the same car. It's not the difference between the 25 and the all new 26, where maybe it's a new platform. Even that, if I go in to buy a Camry and they say, do you want the all new whiz bang one or last year's, which looks a little different, but is still a Camry for any amount less, I'm taking the older one, because what difference does it make?
It's the same car.
It's the same car. It's
Yeah.
not going to have the improvements in the Model Y, the new Model Y. For those who haven't had a chance to drive it yet, it is smoother. If I had 3 complaints about the old Model Y, which I have, and I do, it's that it's too bumpy. It's a little bit noisier than I might like, and the range on road trips isn't quite what I had hoped for. Those are the 3 issues they addressed first and foremost. Getting it a little quieter, I don't like it as much as I thought I would. I'm like, yeah, it is quieter, but you immediately just don't notice it.
Mhm.
The smooth ride, though. Oh, giving that car back and going back to mine and bouncing down my street, I was just a little sad.
Mm.
And the longer range is fantastic. But if you want a real budget range king, Model 3 rear-wheel drive is the way to go. I drove it for 4 hours and brought it back at 37%. That
Wow.
is without ever charging it, without ever thinking about it. You could easily do 4-hour stretches in that. And I don't even know if I recommend 4 hours. Maybe don't, but you could.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a recommendation for one's bladder to go that long. Yeah.
No, and that's the reality. People have asked me, my brother asked me, how often do you stop to charge? And like, what is the ritual for charging? I said, I get there, I plug it in, I use the bathroom, grab a snack. And if that's all I need to do, I just unplug and go. I don't even look at the screen. I just go. But usually I'll catch up on my text messages or voicemails. And by the time I'm done with that, it's time to go. Well, I do that in the car while I'm driving. Don't do that, please.
Yeah, that's
Don't do
right.
that. My car won't let me. Unless I choose to also be in manual control while not being in. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. And while I just hit the drive-through and get food and I drive 16, don't do that. There's a reason professionals aren't allowed to do that. I would
Mhm.
like you to not do that too. I'm on the road with you. And if you're upset about sharing the road with my technical experiment, I'm more upset about sharing the road with a sleepy driver who knows perfectly well they shouldn't be doing that.
That's right.
And I will tell you, a 12-hour drive supervising FSD feels like a 3 or 4-hour drive in manual.
Yeah. No, I can vouch for that personally as well. I've done a 7,000-mile road trip in my Cybertruck, right? So put a lot of miles on in a very short period of time, and I arrived over that multi-day trip feeling a lot fresher than I thought I would.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So guys, in the comments, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Cern's X information will be in the description below. And you got to check him out. Give him a follow. He's got charts like this for days. And everybody else, subscribe if you haven't. Pretty please. When I get to 100,000 subscribers, I will stop begging. I promise. But until then, I'm just please, sir, may I have some more? Everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, on the flippity flop.
Thanks, Brian.